the Council of Trent. This Council of Trent, in chapter 4, dealing with baptism of session 22, said that only by baptism is one saved today. Okay? By the laver of regeneration. And so a lot of people have looked at that and they've said, well, if baptism is required, and of course they go back to Jesus also in John chapter 3 verse 5, who says, unless a man is born of water and the Spirit, he cannot inherit the kingdom of heaven. Okay? So the word unless is taken in a strict sense, okay? And it's made into a doctrine which says, if for whatever reason, whatever excuse you have, you don't receive the water, you can't be saved. There's a lot of people that believe that today. Okay? Is that what Jesus is saying? Very good. No, is the answer. No. Okay? Jesus is saying the same thing that the popes have said. Okay? Under normal circumstances, under the regularities of life, yes. This is the way that salvation comes. And anyone who refuses it cannot be saved. That's basically what he's saying. Okay? If you know, Nicodemus, and I'm telling you that you have to have water to be saved, and you say no, you're damned. Okay? But if someone doesn't hear those words, that you have to have water to be saved, okay, what's going to happen? Okay? Well, here's another issue where the church says, we're going to leave that with God. Let him decide, out of his wisdom and infinite knowledge, what the answer to that question is. Okay? What we will say for now, the church says, is we will add a phrase in there. Okay? And the phrase that they added, it says, or the desire of. Okay? In the Council of Trent, chapter 4. Okay? So, the laver of water or the desire of it. Okay? You can be saved. All right? So that puts a whole different twist on it, doesn't it? Okay? Because what does desire refer to? It refers to a mental capacity, a mental thinking process. It's not something physical. Well, you might say that it's physical in the sense we have little neurons working in there that make us desire to receive the water. Okay? But the fact is, it's a mental process. It's not something physical. Water is physical. Okay? When you pour water on that baby's forehead, that's something real and tangible. You can feel it, you can touch it, you can smell it, you can taste it. Okay? But you can't taste a mental process, can you? You can't even feel it. I can't even feel myself think right now. Isn't that funny? Okay? It's a mental process, a desire. I can't put a finger on desire. I don't know what desire is. I just know that I desire something. You see, I desire to get this talk done, but you know, but the fact is, it's a mental process. So that's quite interesting that the church put that into a doctrine of the Catholic Church. You see, something physical or the desire of something physical. Okay, so we're into a whole new realm here. All right, now. Unfortunately, the church has not come out with what you would call a dogmatic definition of, well, what does its desire mean? Okay? Because if you're going to enter a new term like that into the formula, well, then I hope you would explain what that term means. Okay? Now, they did it sort of in a roundabout way, okay? But probably not enough where it's going to settle a lot of controversy about this issue that still is talked about today. Okay? And, you know, I'm certainly not going to settle it here, all right? All I can tell you is what I know, what God's given me, and allow you to think it out for yourselves as to what the possible answer might be, okay? Well, anyway, some people will say, well, that word desire was put in there basically to refer to the catechumen who was desiring to come into the church, and he hadn't received baptism yet, and he died before he received baptism. And so his desire to receive the baptism would be sufficient in order to justify him. Okay? Then there's some other people who come along and say, well, yeah, well, even if that was true, he was justified by his desire, but he wasn't saved by his desire. Okay? So what they do is they separate justification, that's the normal word that we use from the Greek and the Latin, to say that someone has been justified before God, okay? His sins, he's been justified from his sins. And they'll say, well, there's a difference between justification and salvation. So he's justified, but in order to actually be saved and go to heaven, he has to eventually receive this water. So it's not true that he would have, if he would have died as a catechumen, that he would have gone to heaven. He would have been justified, but that doesn't count to getting to heaven. You see how you can, all kinds of ways you can look at these things, okay? That's one way to look at it. Another way to look at it is the more liberal view. And you'll see a lot of that today. So well, actually, the liberals probably don't even pay attention to this passage, but more liberal thought, we should say, looks at it and says, well, the desire would be something that if I knew that if it was possible for me to know that I needed baptism in order to be saved, then I would have desired it. Okay? And so, hypothetically speaking, we could say that everybody out there who loves God and wants to live a good life and go to heaven, they really would desire baptism if they knew that baptism was required of them. So in that sense, that's how the desire applies to them. Okay? So now that's at the far liberal extreme of interpreting that passage. The catechumen idea was a very conservative way of viewing that passage, you see. And there's everything in between. Okay? So what do we have here? Well, we have something that is a controversy. Okay? There's doubt about what the church meant by the desire of baptism. Is everybody with me? Okay? All right, so we have a little controversy there. But what do we know in the end? What do we know in the end? We know what? Who's in control of salvation? Yeah, God's in control of salvation. You know? And myself, I can't picture God, parsing those nouns and verbs to such a point, well, you didn't meet this requirement here. You didn't parse this verb here correctly, so you can't be saved. I don't think salvation is, that's the basis of salvation. All right? So I do believe, regardless of what the Council of Trent was trying to say by that word desire, I do believe, as the church has always believed, and no one can prove it differently, that the church has always left open a contingent, a separate category for people who have not heard of the church, who have not heard of the gospel, and they can be saved also. And our Pope Pius IX said it very succinctly in his encyclical. You can go read it yourself in Denzinger's book. I forget which, 817 I think is the paragraph, I'm not positive. But you can go read it for yourself and find out what he said. And I think that that's the last official statement that we've had on that issue, and that's what we have to go by. Okay? All right. Now, I did finish at 3 o'clock. So, I will take 5 or 10 minutes for questions, and then you can also buy some more books if you want.